Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I'm glad to tell you that this is our last lecture this academic year, and I want to congratulate you because if you are here, it means that you have gone through all academic year and you have done all the tasks and exercises, and probably this is the last point. Well, actually, not the very last one, because also we will have to take a sample of TKT module number 1 with you a little bit later to get a little bit of feedback from you. So actually, I'm going to give you a summative test on our course. And if you don't know what a summative test is, well, exactly this is what we are going to be talking about today. So because today we are talking about assessment types and tasks. So, but before we go into details, probably it would be good to start with the general concepts, right? So, what is assessment, right? Assessment means judging learners' performance by collecting information about it. And we assess learners for different reasons, using different kinds of tests, types of tests to do so. And the second question is, what are assessment tasks? So they are the methods that we use for assessing learners. We can assess learners informally or formally. Informal assessment is when we observe learners to see how well they are doing something and then give them comments on their performance. And formal assessment is when we assess learners through tests or exams and give their work a mark or a grade. Okay, but I think the next important question is, like, why might we want to assess learners, right? What could be the reasons? So, and I wanted to ask you this question. So, what reasons can you think of for assessing your students? Why might you want to assess them? Please leave your comments here. Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to share with you some of my reasons. So at the beginning of a course, we might give them a test to find out what they know and don't know, right? And this is called a diagnostic test. The information from the assessment helps us decide what to teach and which learners need help in which areas of language. When learners go to a language school or evening classes, the school may want to know what level of learners are, so they give them a test. This is called a placement test. We use the information from a placement test to decide what level of class the learner should go into. After we have finished teaching a part of a course, we may want to find out how well learners have learned it. So this is called formative assessment. We use a test for this purpose. It's called a progress test. We use the information from formative assessment to decide if we need to continue teaching this area or not, and to give learners feedback on their strengths and difficulties in learning in this area. At the end of a term, of course, we may assess learners to see how well they have learned the contents of the whole course. This kind of assessment is called achievement or summative testing. Learners usually receive a score or mark from this kind of testing and sometimes feedback on their performance. Sometimes learners take tests to see how good they are at the language, and this kind of test is called a proficiency test. The contents of the test are not based on a course or syllabus that the learner has followed. Okay, well, what other types of assessment are there? Well, learners can also assess themselves, and this would be self-assessment, or one another, and that would be peer assessment. They usually do this informally with checklists to guide them. So the reason for using both of these kinds of assessment is to help learners to understand their language use and performance better, and so become more autonomous. Well, there are many different assessment tasks. I'm going to show you some of them. Probably I'm not going to explain a lot, but rather demonstrate what it looks like, because I'm sure that you have come across this kind of tasks in your learning or teaching processes. So first one is gap fill, multiple choice questions, true or false questions, ordering, correcting mistakes. Tom doesn't want to clean his room today. Taking part in interviews, conversations, or role plays. Writing letters or compositions. Dictation, yeah, you can probably recognize yourself in the photo. So, actually, there are important differences between this kind of testing tasks. So, and there are several things we should keep in mind when selecting the tasks to assess the learners. Well, let's look at this in more detail. Some tasks are like tasks that we use outside the classroom to communicate. For example, a conversation, an interview, a letter, reading a leaflet for prices, for example. So these tasks are test communication skills. Some tasks, for example, gap fill, test the accuracy of language use. We do not use them to communicate, and they do not test communication skills. Some tasks, again, such as gap fill or choosing between pairs of sounds, just test one thing. For example, learners' knowledge of the past tense or their ability to distinguish between sounds. Some tasks, such as a composition or a conversation, test many things together. A composition, for example, tests spelling, handwriting, punctuation, grammar, vocabulary, organizational ideas, and fluency writing. A conversation can test pronunciation, propriety, accuracy, fluency, and interaction. The answers to some kinds of assessment tasks are easy to mark because they are either right or wrong. For example, in multiple choice and true or false, gap fill, and dictation tasks, these are called objective tests. Marking some kinds of tasks, for example, compositions, role plays, stories, interviews, involves judging many things together. For example, for writing, this would be spelling, handwriting, punctuation, grammar, vocabulary, organizational ideas, fluency writing. The learner may do some of these things well, but others poorly. So the mark we give to the learner's answers in this kind of task depends on our judgment. So these tasks are called subjective tests. Well, another kind of assessment method is a portfolio. This is a collection of learners' work, which the learner creates himself or herself or with the teacher during the course. Often, it also contains comments on the work written by the learner or classmates. Portfolios can be used for formal or informal assessment. Well, and yeah, some tasks may be informal, some assessment may be informal. So let's go into a bit more detail about what informal assessment involves. So some informal assessment methods are observing learners' spoken or written work and answers to comprehension tasks. Like you can keep notes on how the learners perform. You can ask your learners to complete self or peer assessment sheets. So we often use informal assessment methods to assess areas such as attitude and effort, which are also like, we can assess them as well. Well, particularly with young learners and with teenagers. So informal assessment is often followed by feedback. to the learners on the strengths and weaknesses of their performance and suggestions for how to improve themselves. Well, okay. Also, a couple of more tips on how to manage and how to deal with your tests and your assessment tasks. So, what you should keep in mind as well. Assessment can affect what we teach, how we teach, and our learners' motivation for learning. So it's very important for tests to have a good influence on teaching and learning. So if your tests do not do this job, probably there is no use in them, right? So the main idea of assessment is not punishing and sanctioning your students, but rather improving the teaching and learning process, right? Well, some assessment tasks are easy to write and to mark, but do they reflect what we are teaching and what learners need to use the language for? We should not use a particular testing method just because it is easy to use and easy to mark. To really reflect the level of learners' learning, the content and methods of progress and achievement tests should reflect the content and methods of our teaching. Through well, feedback to learners on what they got right or wrong, like their strengths and weaknesses, and what they can do to improve is very important. Through feedback, assessment helps learning. Informal assessment is often much more suitable for assessing young learners than formal assessment. This is because their ways of thinking and learning are based on experiencing and communicating. Okay, now that is your time to think and talk and write. So I'm going to show you 10 assessment tasks. Your task is to decide what kind of assessment tasks they are and what they aim to test. So to say, again, I would be really happy if you used some of the terminology that you have seen throughout the previous part of our lecture, but I would be satisfied anyway if you just make your idea clear and understandable. And of course, you can see that there may be multiple answers here. There is no like a fixed answer to every of these questions, but the answer should be reasonable. And if I have some doubts about like how reasonable your answer is, probably I will just not mark this answer and connect to you in comments to discuss, like to ask you to clarify your idea further or maybe rethink it, you know. Okay, so be free to answer, don't feel limited, but try to be reasonable. Well, what is this assessment task and what does it aim to test? First, the learner looks at a simple picture story and then tells the story to the teacher. Thank you. The learners listen to a recording, I'm sorry, there is a misprint, describing the appearance of the girl. Then they complete a picture of the girl by drawing her. Thank you. Learners take part in a speaking activity in which they act out parts. Thank you. The learners answer some simple questions about themselves orally. Thank you. The learners complete blanks with the correct form of the verb to have. Thank you. The learners choose the correct words for some pictures and write them under the pictures. Thank you. The learners repeat words after the teacher. Thank you. The learners research and write about a topic. Thank you. The learners fill in sheets about their own progress. Thank you. The teacher keeps notes on learners' difficulties with the idea being taught, then discusses them with the learners. Thank you. That's it. So now a little bit more of reflection on your side. The first question will relate to your own experience. So How was your English taught at school? And did assessment help you learn English? Thank you. Now, what do you think? Which are better assessments of a learner's English? Tests that focus on communication or tests that focus on accuracy? Why? Thank you. So which is more helpful to teaching and learning? Informal or formal assessment? Thank you. And now the TKT part. So we will have 5 instructions that the teacher gives to his or her students, and then we need to match these instructions to the terms. Okay, so the first instruction is this. Read the sentences and complete the blanks with one word only. So what term can we apply to this? Labeling, jumbled sentences, picture composition, matching, gap fill, discussion. So your idea, please. Thank you. So there's a gap fill. What are the names of these things? Write the name beside each picture. Thank you. That is labeling, of course. Draw a line between the words on the left and their meanings on the right. Thank you. Matching we have. Exchange ideas on the topic with your classmates. Thank you. That is a discussion. Look at these and write the story they tell. So now we have got just a choice of 2 options, but think about what these mean, right? Before you make your choice. Thank you. And these are actually pictures, and that would be a picture composition here. Well, my dear friends, that's it for today, and that's almost it for this academic year. Thank you very much for your work. I hope you enjoyed the process, and I hope to see you next academic year. Good luck.